This is my older sister, Liz. This picture was taken long before I knew her, and when everyone called her Betsy. I want to tell you her story, and I want to tell you the aftermath of her story. I want to tell you the story about a family that had their lives changed forever because of the actions of someone that just didn't care.
Now, a local man driving drunk when he hit and killed a mom of 6.
I'm so sorry. Somebody just busted through the lifeguard stand here in a vehicle. No! Somebody has been run over.
Well, tonight, a suspected drunk driver accused of hitting and killing a woman on the beach.
According to the Florida Highway Patrol, Doolin was traveling eastbound on Dunlawton Boulevard when he drove down the beach access ramp, through the closed gate, struck a toll booth, and then crashed into the victim.
He came through the entrance to the beach.
I was sitting up there praying, going, please, 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 because we could actually see them try to resuscitate her.
Doolin pled no contest in July. Authorities say he killed Braley after driving onto the beach in Daytona Beach shores, never once slamming on his brakes. The Braleys were visiting from North Carolina on a family vacation.
Liz loved so much in life. She loved her church. She loved her family. She especially loved her 6 kids. And she really, really loved her 2 grandkids.
Not peekaboo. Can you say grandma? Grandma.
While this story is one of tragedy, it also began with one other thing that Liz loved. Her love of photography. On the night of June 24th, 2014, Liz decided she wanted one last night of taking photos of the beach. She had no idea that within minutes of walking on the beach, she would be killed. Liz had no idea that at that exact moment, Sean Doolin had spent his entire day drinking. He had left an unnamed bar and was at that very moment barreling down Dunlawton Avenue, traveling at what experts believe to be 68 miles an hour. Never once hitting the brakes, he came down the beach access ramp, hitting the closed gate before hitting a toll booth, and then hitting Liz so hard he drug her over 25 feet. But none of that mattered because she was already dead as soon as he hit her. Now, from this point forward, I can't tell you from Liz's point of view. But I can tell you what happened from the eyes of Liz's son, Jonathan, who was there with her walking on the beach that night. When Doolin came through the barricade that was blocking off the beach, everyone jumped out of the way. Once Jonathan stood up and looked around for Liz, he saw her camera bag on the ground and yelled out for her. It was soon after he saw the peach shirt Liz had been wearing that night under the tires of the Nissan that was now resting on the beach. My nephew ran to the car and yelled at the driver, "You just hit my mom. That was my mom," before reaching in and pulling Sean Doolin out of the driver's seat to prevent him from driving away. While Doolin was out of the car, he had to be physically held down by bystanders because he made several attempts to leave the scene. Let me pause the story for a minute to explain the reason why Liz was even in Florida. Her youngest son, Jason, had been living with his aunt in Daytona, and he developed a love for running. And he was actually good. So good, in fact, he was on his school's track team and had been invited to participate at state level in Miami. Liz decided to make a family vacation out of it, and they stayed in Daytona the rest of the time while they were in Florida. It was on the last night of her vacation when she decided to make that fateful trip to the beach. Thinking back to that night is always hard. The chaos and confusion afterwards and the uncertainty of what was going on. On that night, I had a friend over, and after she left around 11 p.m., as usual, I got on Facebook. It wasn't long before I noticed some odd posts. There were quite a few posts saying "Rest in peace, Liz," and people asking to pray for my family because Liz had been killed by a drunk driver. Confused about this, I called my sister Carrie and I asked her if she had heard from Liz. We didn't realize she had stayed another day in Florida and assumed she was at home in Hendersonville. Carrie said she hadn't and she would call me right back, and hung up the phone. At the beginning, we were hoping it was some teenagers trying to be funny and making posts because they were mad at my nieces for whatever reason. I sat on the couch and turned on local news to see if there was a story about a woman being killed by a drunk driver. At this point, Carrie called me back and said she had tried to call Liz, but there wasn't an answer. After about an hour or so, I finally got a call from my nephew CJ. The connection was terrible, and I could barely make out what he was saying. Every time he would start speaking, he would get muffled, and I couldn't hear him. I kept asking him to repeat what he was saying, and finally, clear as day, he yelled, "Liz is dead." We had Liz's funeral on July 1st, 2014. Many people came out, and I was asked to get up and speak in front of everyone and say something about Liz. But when the time came, I froze. I sat there when I was called up. But I still remember what I wanted to say about Liz that day. I wanted to tell a story. A story about when I first moved to South Carolina, when I was a broke 20-something-year-old just struggling to get by. Somehow Liz found out about my struggles and asked me to give her my bank info and she would deposit some money for me. I went home later that night, and when I saw she had put $25 in my account, I remember thinking, that's it? It wasn't until years later when it finally struck me that Liz was a mother of 6 young kids at the time, with a single income from her husband. And she probably only had $25 for herself for the rest of the week, and she gave it to me. So that was it, but to her that was probably everything. The aftermath of all this has been pure devastation to my family. Liz was the glue that held this family together. If we needed anything, Liz was always there. And I don't think any of us ever realized how much we needed her until she was gone. The stress of it all never left our father, and I'm certain had this not happened, he never would have had a stroke and he would not have passed away. And with that, our mother never would have had her stroke and she never would have passed away. In July of 2015, Sean Doolin had taken a plea, which meant that he could bypass going to trial and throw himself at the mercy of a judge, hoping for a lesser sentence. Finally, in October of 2015, we all went to Florida while it was time for court. He sat in front of all of us and cried for our forgiveness and begged for our sympathy. And you know, I don't feel sorry for him. I feel he got the justice that was deserved. I do, however, feel bad for his family. But in years, once he's out of jail, they'll pick up their pieces and they will move forward. My family stopped moving forward on June 24th, 2014, and the world just always seems to keep moving around us. I will never truly feel he got enough time. But how do you measure what's enough?
Now, just minutes ago, the judge handed down the sentence. We learned that Doolin will spend a little over 10 years in prison, 3 years probation with DUI conditions, over $9,000 in restitution, and revocation of his driver's license.